Our next guest needs no introduction. He's one of the most respected MMA figures in the world, a six-time UFC champion, and now a movie star. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, he is riding a mountain bike through the desert as we do this interview. That's right. We couldn't make it any better. He is a man's man, Randy Couture. Randy, welcome to Submission Radio.
Thank you. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well. We're not exactly on mountain bikes. We're in a nice room with rich mahogany, so very contrasting to yourself. But we're doing good. Hey, speaking of action, you finished wrapping up on the Expendables 3. Can you give us a bit of a teaser into any surprises that await for that one?
Well, it's an amazing cast of guys. Obviously, we added a few more names to the list. We've got Antonio Banderas, Wesley Snipes, Mel Gibson, Kelsey Grammer.
Yep.
And then we have some new up-and-coming young Expendables, which creates kind of an interesting storyline in the movie with Kellen Lutz, Glenn Powell, Ronda Rousey, and Victor Ortiz. So we had a lot of fun making the movie. We spent 2 months in Sofia, Bulgaria, shooting, and wrapped up the end of October. We're just now hitting the media trail and doing a bunch of media stuff for the movie, which comes out August 15th.
Okay, August 15th. We've got to remember that date. Now, I was watching the trailer just yesterday. Now, we see heaps of action heroes, all well-known. You've got, the names in order. They read Stallone, Statham, Banderas, Lee, Snipes, Lundgren, and then you see Grammer, Kelsey Grammer. Now, I'm actually a massive Kelsey Grammer fan, but it seems so random to have Frazier in the movie. What kind of element did Kelsey Grammer bring?
Actually, it was really cool, and I'm a big fan of his as well. I grew up in Seattle, so having Frazier set in Seattle was kind of neat for me, but he was fantastic. He plays a very kind of eclectic character in the movie, and he does an amazing job. He's really funny, and I think everybody's going to dig it.
Now, Randy, going back in time, 95, 96, did you ever think that one day you'd be in a movie with possibly the manliest cast ever assembled in the history of movies? I mean, what's it like being around these guys, all hanging out, chilling out between takes?
Yeah, I think there should be a warning label before the movie. If you bring your wife or girlfriend, there's a good chance you'll walk out of the theater pregnant. But I, like you, grew up watching Rambo and Conan and the Die Hard trilogy and all those movies. So to be suiting up and playing around with these guys, goofing off, shooting guns, I mean, it's absolutely amazing for me. I got to pinch myself every time I'm on set.
Now, as far as hanging out with all these guys, and each one of them has, I'm sure, has crazy stories. Obviously, all of your fights, or at least most of them, we've had the chance to see on TV. When on the set of the Expendables, did you get a chance to share any fight stories with the other guys and hear their stories? And who had the craziest one?
Well, the only guy that's really had any combative sports experience is golf. And he did a ton of karate, point sparring, and the guy's still going and doing demonstrations and breaking boards and all those things that are indigenous to Kyokushin karate, which is the style that he practices. And obviously, the 6'4" Swede, he's a pretty formidable guy. He's a great big guy. Everybody asked me about this fight or that fight, and who was the toughest guy, who hit you the hardest, all those kinds of questions. I don't think anybody was a bigger student of the game than Steve Austin in the first movie. He had a ton of questions. He knew the stats of all the guys from front to back, and he was a huge fan of the sport. So it was really fun to sit around and talk to him, and then obviously we got to culminate the movie with him and I in a big fight scene, which was a ton of fun, and he was amazing.
Now, Randy, there are rumors, and we want you to tell us, is there going to be an Expendables 4? Apparently, it's already been confirmed.
I'm hearing rumors the same, but I've got no hard, fast evidence. I suspect the third one's going to be a huge hit, and that leads me to believe that there's going to be a four. I've heard there's a script in the works. So, obviously I'm hopeful. It's like having a golden goose. You just keep hatching eggs. It's awesome.
I feel like you're shooting Expendables 4 right now. You're on this dirt bike, and I feel like we're in a movie.
Yeah, for all you guys out there, I apologize for the heavy breathing. But for all you ladies out there, I hope you enjoy it.
Well, yeah, try and stop us from enjoying it, Randy. Most of the cast also, they have some background in martial arts, not just golf. I mean, you've got, Jet Li in Kung Fu, Lundgren with his karate, Victor Ortiz has boxing, Ronda Rousey, I mean, obviously. Hypothetically, who do you think would have the base to be the most successful MMA fighter if they had gotten into it a lot earlier?
Well, obviously, I think Victor and Ronda are highly successful in their own right. Ronda's, for all intents and purposes, the queen of mixed martial arts right now, and would be tough for any guy on that set to deal with. I'm pretty sure she'd probably remove some arms and take them home with her. Victor, I think, is an amazing athlete, and given some time, if he wanted to transition to MMA, would be highly effective. Ross' karate background is very, very good, but I think he would suffer on the wrestling and grappling side of things. And given his length and size, it would be a slower learning curve for him to get him up to speed to be real effective in MMA. Jason's an incredible athlete with his diving background and the gymnastics and martial arts that he does. So, and I know he does some grappling. He would be somebody, I think, that could make the transition if he really wanted to. But to be honest, why would any of them really want to? He's so much nicer on a set getting to do 5 and 6 and 7 takes of a fight scene than getting one shot at it. And when you get it wrong, you're getting punched in the grill.
Now, Randy, over to MMA. Recently, there's been a ban on TRT. Give us your thoughts on that. And also, do you sort of wish it came earlier? I mean, were there times in your career where it was obvious some of your opponents might have been on some kind of performance-enhancing forms?
Well, I never really worried about it. We didn't start testing until 2000. Before that, there were definitely guys that I was competing against that were doing that, but to me it was an indication of a lack of confidence and a focus on the wrong things. They were more worried about how they appeared than learning the tactics and technique and being in good enough shape to win the fight. I knew, facing a guy like that more than likely within a matter of minutes they were going to blow up. They weren't going to be able to move their arms. They were going to be very tired. It's just the body's not made to pump that much oxygen to those size muscles in an anaerobic capacity. So I never worried about it. The TRT stuff, with the exceptions and all that, didn't happen until the last probably 3 years recently. And I've been retired for 3 years, so I don't think I ever had to worry about it and wouldn't have worried about it, to be honest. I made a different choice. Obviously the TRT exemptions and all those things with the commission weren't really going on when I competed, but I still was, based on athletic performance, trying to get the most out of my body in my mid to late 40s. And so I had to, get a blood test, find out where my hormone levels were, all those things were, find out what was going on in my body as I, was approaching 44, looking at another title fight and all those things. And I think what the average fan doesn't understand is the rigors that this training puts your body through, what it does to your glands, even to guys in their 20s. It's torturous on the body, and that's why some of these guys chose to do the TRT. So, I don't necessarily blame them for that. I chose a little bit different approach. There are natural ways to force your body to produce more testosterone and your hormones, your adrenal glands, and all those things to get where they're supposed to be through natural substances that are all approved and aren't going to bring a false positive or a positive in a drug test. And that was important to me, especially with a nickname like The Natural. I mean, all that kind of goes out the window if you're doing TRT or any of those things. So I made a decision to track it with a doctor and use natural means to monitor test. Hello.
Hey,
He's
Randy.
back.
Can you
He's
hear us?
back.
There we go.
Awesome, awesome. Much
Lost
better.
you there. Sorry, that was my fault. I went to a dead spot, got back in the truck. I'm on my hands free, so no more heavy breathing.
Oh, damn it.
We'll
All
miss
right.
it. All right, we'll pick up where we left off. Randy, I was going to ask you, the whole TRT ban, you know, it's a big step in MMA. It's a good step forward. And MMA is obviously constantly evolving. What do you think the next big change in MMA will be?
I mean, it's hard to say what changes will you know, obviously, if you look at all the other professional sports out there with regard to the TRT, we had 15 exemptions in the different states that allowed TRT exemptions. That's more than professional football or baseball or any other professional sport. So that begs the question, you know, what's going on in MMA? Why are all these guys needing a testosterone replacement therapy protocol? And I think, you know, the big expose on outside the lines that in a small way implicated the UFC when they highlighted Vitor Belfort, who had a TRT exemption, and he said, well, he'd never heard of TRT until the UFC doctor, you know, turned him onto it and told him what it was all about, was, I think, one of the reasons why the UFC then didn't want to be implicated. They didn't want to be party to that, so they moved with the commission to ban the exemptions. I think, you know, it doesn't really matter. If they're using a doctor, obviously they have low testosterone issues because of the rigors of our training. Whether the UFC is helping them find doctors to do that appropriately or not doesn't really matter, in my opinion. And I think they were just trying to cover their butt by pushing the exemption or ban on the exemption through. But the whole thing, performance, I mean, how many guys have we had come up positive? You know, that, in my opinion, is worse than the TRT. At least they're going through proper protocol and using physicians and doing the right thing. That's a lot different than the guys just trying to take a shortcut and use performance-enhancing drugs outside of medical guidance. And we've had several guys that have done that and get banned from their profession for a year. That's a pretty stiff penalty and not worth the risk, in my opinion. So what happens next and what's the next big thing? I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot of talk about, you know, uniforms in the UFC, which would be interesting. I don't agree as an athlete. You know, I can supplement my gym and my income significantly with endorsements and all those sorts of things. And the UFC, being the top promotion in the sport of mixed martial arts, is kind of setting the stage, setting the bar, both in production value and in the way they're handling the athletes. And there's a long way to go in handling the athletes better, both with the pay and the guys' ability to make a living. There's a small echelon of guys at the top percent that make a great amount of money, and those endorsements of $50,000 or $60,000 don't really make that much difference to them. But everybody else from there down, those endorsements are a huge deal. That's a lot of money compared to the purses that they're making every time they go out and fight. So to tie their hands and not allow them to do that by requiring a uniform, even to tie their hands the way they do now and requiring anybody who wants to be an official sponsor to pony up $100,000 to the UFC to be an official sponsor is ridiculous. It eliminates all the small niche programs and niche clothing companies and endorsements with supplement companies that can't afford that sort of thing. So that again limits the fighters in that mid to low tier ability to make money outside of signing a fight contract. And that's tough. So I think that, there are some issues. I think that the sport is exhibiting some growing pains. Still on a global level, fights and promotions all over the world. With the big three in the U.S., obviously, the UFC, Bellator, and World Series of Fighting, are all doing a pretty good job with their brands in the marketplace, but it's saturated the market a little bit. It's hard to track the UFC on the 3 channels on Fox. The World Series fights are fewer and far between. The Bellator shows are great, and they're doing a strong job with the progressive tournament format, but there's still a lot of unknown fighters that haven't been developed and haven't been made into stars there in that brand. And I think the same is true with the World Series of Fighting. There needs to be more behind-the-scenes type footage and give us a chance to really get to know some of these athletes and create that vested interest, seeing them compete, which is the way it kind of used to be in the UFC back in the day when they were on Spike. When the pay-per-views were few and far between, they spent a little extra time building up those characters, giving people an opinion about who those fighters were and whether they wanted to see them win or lose. I think those are all things that, in the explosion of the sport, have fallen by the wayside a little bit, and therefore, there's still a huge fan base and it's still growing, but they know less and less and less about the fighters that are actually competing.
Now, Randy, you have a really good point. And Nate Quarry and a lot of other fighters who are retiring, they've come out and said that they haven't made enough money to retire on. Do you think that's an issue in MMA, that so many fighters put in so many years into an organization like the UFC, but they don't walk out with necessarily the tools or anything to really, keep their life going after they retire from MMA? Do you think that's a serious issue in MMA right now?
Well, I certainly think it is an issue. I think that like I said, there's only a small echelon of those guys at the top percent that made the kind of money that down the road, when we're done competing, we'll be able to live off of. We'll be able to rally into some other business or some other thing that may or may not revolve around fighting, but will carry us through the next 15 to 20 years of our lives when we're unable to physically go out and get in a cage and fight for money. And there's a disparaging gap between that top percentage guys and the rest of the guys. Nate Quarry is certainly a marquee guy from being on The Ultimate Fighter and getting his one shot at the title. He never got to win. Unfortunately, he lost that fight to Rich Franklin for the title and then never really came back to title contention. And so, although in that current year and those current years that he competed, he made decent money by anybody's standards, he didn't make the huge 6-figure numbers that those top small percentage of guys make that they can squirrel away, and if they're smart with it, will carry them through the rest of their life. Therefore, now what's Nate Quarry's option? He needs to find some other job, some other way to earn a living besides getting in a cage. And there's going to be a whole slew of fighters that are in that boat that are great fighters, great competitors, and their career runs its course, whether they won titles or not. How much money were they able to make, and what were they able to do with the money they did make in that short window of opportunity?
Randy, I was wondering, over here in Australia, we have a sport called football, and it's called the Australian Football League. It's a crazy sport. I'm not sure if you've seen it before, but I think you'd love it. It's really manly, and people get tackled, and they're flying all over the place. But one of the things
I've been to a game in Melbourne.
Yeah, it's an interesting sport, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of it reminded me a little bit of a kind of a cross between football and soccer and basketball. The players are tall and rangy and quick, like basketball players, but they're rough and aggressive, more like a football player without the pads. It was a cool sport.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting sport, and everybody listening around the world who's not in Australia needs to check it out. But one of the things that we have in Australia for these athletes, because they started at the age 17, age 18, is while they're beginning their career in the AFL, the clubs take it into into their hands to ensure that these guys get some kind of education while training and while competing in the AFL. So when they walk out of there, they have something to fall back on. Now, with these young guys going into the UFC, guys like John Jones and other young guys, do you think it's important to implement some kind of education system for these guys so they had something to fall back on if this UFC or MMA career doesn't work out?
Well, there's a high percentage of the guys that fight mixed martial arts, like John Jones, who've been to college. John has a college degree. He has other options. I had a college degree. Rich Franklin, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, we all went to college. The average athlete in mixed martial arts has been to college as a norm. They have an education. The thing is, there's I don't know, something about being a pro athlete and the way, doing something you love and making that kind of money. But then to go back and now work some other regular 9-to-5 job, it's not terribly appealing to some of these guys. And I understand that. I've been fortunate and able to create a brand and take care of the money I made, and now obviously getting the chance to act and be involved in movies and stuff. But I'm one of the few that have been that fortunate. So guys like John Jones, Rich Franklin, owns a juice shop in Beverly Hills now. I mean, he's a smart guy. He took care of his money. He's rallied that into something outside of getting punched in the grill to make a living, and he's doing great. But there's still a huge percentage of guys that don't get that opportunity or don't have the forward-thinking mindset to recognize that they have a small window to make this money and to make the most of it, build their brand strong, square away that money, take care of it, invest it wisely, put it in places where it's going to work for you when you're unable to go out and earn it.
I wanted to also ask, but before we talk about something else, just one more question as far as fighter pay. Now, a lot of people say that one of the reasons why fighters may not be getting as much as some people think they're worth is because the MMA is such a young sport, and the UFC, to a degree, is still a young company. They haven't been around for as long as your basketball, your NFL, even soccer and things like that. Do you think it is one of the big reasons because we haven't been around as long as boxing, or do you think there's other factors?
Well, I think there's other factors. I mean, I don't think there's a statute of limitations on a sport, and that fighters should get paid what they deserve to get paid. If you start looking at the percentages of what the promoters and the promotions are taking home versus what they pay out to the fighters that fought on those cards, it's a pretty big gap. And that boils down to the promoter and how he feels about himself when he looks himself in the mirror and recognizes what he's paying the athletes that are putting their butts on the line for his promotion. And it boils down to business and business sense. Those guys are trying to get everything they can get for as little as they have to pay for it. It's pretty standard capitalism. And I think that the first entity that comes along with a good platform to promote their brand and does the fighters better, creates a great two-way contract that takes care of fighters, pays the fighters a higher percentage of what's made on those pay-per-views and in those shows, allows the fighters to get endorsements and build those relationships and make money off those endorsements and representing those programs. He's going to have something. He's going to put all the other promotions that are out there right now out of the water because every fighter is going to gravitate towards a square deal like that. And right now that doesn't really exist.
Now, Randy, you've worked for a lot of great companies. One of them is Bellator and the UFC. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like working with Dana White and Bjorn Rebney? What's the biggest difference there, and what's the experiences like?
Well, we have to clear up the misconception, and the misconception comes directly from Dana. When I signed a deal with Spike TV, my deal was with Spike TV, not with Bellator, not with Bjorn. I've never had a contract or worked for Bjorn. I did rub elbows with Bjorn through the course of the TV show Fight Master on Spike, where we trained some young athletes who all wanted a shot in Bellator, but my deal was strictly with Spike TV. So Dana tried to make me out to be the villain and the bad guy who was a traitor to the company and say that I went to Bellator and was working for Bellator, which was misinformation. It wasn't true. My deal is with Spike TV. I've got a new show coming out on Spike in August called Gym Rescue, where we go into fitness centers along the lines of the Bar Rescue property and try and turn failing gyms around and get them in a situation that's profitable. I've only been to 2 Bellator shows in my life. I've had several fighters that trained through my gym in Vegas at Extreme Couture that have fought for Bellator. I've followed the progressive tournament format when those guys were competing. It's an interesting format. Obviously, I like Spike TV. I like the commitment that they made to the sport of mixed martial arts. When nobody else would put it on TV, they had the balls to put it on. And so for that reason, I'm happy to be involved with Spike and to be developing TV shows, whether they're revolving around MMA or not, that help Spike out. My experience with Bjorn during the course of the show was fine. He seemed to know the fighters very well. He had a strong rapport with those fighters. They seemed to respect him. I know he's had run-ins with some of the fighters. I only read about those in the paper. I never really saw any of that firsthand. Obviously, I have a long-standing history with Dana White, and I know him well. I know how he operates and the types of things that he does with regard to the fighters, and his reputation speaks for itself. So I don't really need to go into any of that. And, again, it boils down to good business sense. And right now, the promoters are getting away with kind of raking the fighters over, and there's a fighter standing on every street corner now that wants to be on television, that wants to be in a show and in a promotion. So they'll sign these crappy contracts and take the lousy pay and all the other stuff that comes with that, because there's no place else to go, really. And until a promoter comes along that wants to be more reputable, wants to do the right thing by the fighters, by their athletes, and give them a fair shake in both in pay and retirement benefits, health insurance, all those things that are important to fighters in the long term, things are going to stay the way they are.
Now, Randy, it seems like Captain America should be one of the forces behind creating an MMA union, but obviously these things are really difficult to put together. It's very difficult for independent contractors to come together to do something like that. Is that something that you'd be interested in doing in the future, and do you think it's likely that there will be an MMA union one day?
Well, I think one of two things has to happen. Either organized labor unions need to get involved in the sport, and the fighters need to come together to get a fair shake from all the promoters out there, or a promoter needs to step up, not be greedy, not want to control everything and everyone, give the fighters a fair shake, and he'll find himself with just about every single fighter in mixed martial arts wanting to join his organization. Either one of those two things would solve the problem. I've heard talk and been asked about unions for a number of years. It would take getting the top echelon guys to throw their hats in that ring and risk, the blacklist and all the other things that are probably going to be repercussions of trying to organize as fighters. That's why we're fighters. We deal with that kind of adversity on a regular basis. So I think it has merit. It has possibility. Would I be interested in being involved? Absolutely. I'm a fighter first and foremost, and would love to see first a promotion come along and do it right. And if that doesn't work, I'd be happy to be involved in spearheading a union of some sort, an actor, like the Screen Actors Guild, same type of deal.
Now, speaking of fighters and, fighters getting a fair shake, your son Ryan, he had some tough matchups from the get-go in the UFC, fighting guys like Ross Pearce in his UFC debut, and then Ally Quinta. Do you think that Ryan got a fair shake in the UFC?
No, I don't think he got a fair shake. I don't think that any 7-0 fighter was being handled appropriately and properly in putting them in with a Ross Pearson who has 30 plus mixed martial arts fights. It's not a real fair matchup on the experience side of things. Was Ryan capable and technically and tactically of winning that fight? I think he proved that. He went out and won the first round. But Ross is a very, very experienced fighter. He stuck to his guns. He knew where he needed to be, and he found a way to win. And I think that was Dana poking at me, trying to get back at me for signing the deal with Spike. And again, trying to villainize me, not allowing me to corner my son, to be involved with my son as he made the transition to the biggest fights of his life. And I think that showed. After the Pearson fight, his confidence was in the toilet. And that second kid, he was more than capable of beating. But I think coming off the Pearson fight, it was a tough fight for him. It didn't go well. And again, I wasn't allowed to be there to do the things that I've been doing for him in every other fight that he had to that point. And that will all fall on Dana's shoulders. And I think that's where you go one step over the line. You start messing with somebody's family. That would be like me messing with his sons, and he's got a couple sons. So, that puts it in perspective, but that's how Dana operates. I know Dana well.
Just you've mentioned that, Dana didn't let you be in Ryan's corner. How much effect do you think that had on Ryan in his fights? I mean, if he's used to having you there and used to fighting with you there, do you think that also was something that affected him during his fights in the UFC?
I think that was part of it. I think if you look at the Pearson fight, we could stack up a few things. His first time in the big show, which we've seen a number of guys have issues stepping up into the biggest promotions and having issues with nerves and all those sorts of things. His first time traveling overseas, he fought in Sweden for that card, which is always a challenge with jet lag and all the other stuff that happens fighting overseas. And then on top of that, there was all the drama and bullcrap going on with Dana and I, which culminated in him banning me from UFC events and not allowing me to corner my son, which I've been a big part of his camps all along. He stacked those three things up on top of fighting a very savvy, very, very good opponent like Ross Pearson, who has 30 MMA fights. Ryan was going into his 8th MMA fight as a professional. That's a pretty significant difference, in my opinion. I think all those things were factors in what happened with Ryan. And there are no excuses. Ryan would be the last person to make an excuse. He did well. He went out. I thought he won the first round. He was doing everything he needed him to do to win that fight. He got caught with a great shot through a lazy kick, and Ross caught it and knocked him on his butt and took care of business. That's fighting. That's how it goes.
Yeah, also speaking of careers and guys that may not have had a fair shake, Jake Shields was actually released yesterday. Now, he's another grappler to add to the list of many grapplers fired due to their fan-unfriendly style. What are your thoughts on the UFC releasing a lot of these wrestlers, such as John Fitch, Yushin Okami, and now Jake Shields?
Well, I mean, we've kind of seen the handwriting on the wall with Jake for a while. He's an amazing competitor. Tremendous grappler, and he's one of those unique athletes that finds a way to win. He knows where he needs to be, and it may not be exciting, but he's going to be effective. And I think that that has to weigh, in my opinion, has to count for something. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I wasn't surprised when I heard it. But, what are you going to do? Again, where's it going to go? There isn't a lot of other options.
Now, Randy, speaking of MMA, now do you still watch MMA actively? Do you still catch up to the shows? Do you still watch different fights?
If I've got a guy fighting on a card, guy that trains with me, trains with Extreme Couture, then I'm absolutely tuned in. If there's a way for me to attend that event, I'm going to attend that event. Obviously, my schedule gets a little crazy too, but I do my best, and I think it is what it is. I don't go to any of the UFCs, obviously, for obvious reasons, and my opinion is I don't need to be there. Why would I want to subject myself to that kind of abuse and nonsense life's too short. But I tune in when I've got guys that I'm involved with, that I train with, that are competing for sure.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, I feel like we need to get a little mustache for you and a wig, and I think we should get some bleacher seats one day for a UFC event. That would be a lot of fun. But apart from that, I think that would be a lot of fun. We should get like Frank Shamrock and Ken Shamrock and all the guys. We should all sneak in. It'll be hilarious. But
yeah, there's some talk about doing that for the 20th anniversary show, having all of us guys that have kind of been on the outs with the company and with Dana all showing up together. Wouldn't you hate to be the security guard that gets called on to go eliminate those guys from the arena? I mean, that was
and of course, Don Fry would be incognito by shaving his mustache, so he'd be extra pissed off.
I'm not sure there's any way that Don Fry is going to be incognito anyhow.
But the question is, do you still get that itch to compete? You know, you've been an MMA competitor, wrestling competitor all your life, and obviously you're an amazing actor now, but do you still get that itch to want to get back in the ring and compete again?
No, actually, I don't. It took me some time to come to terms with the decision I made to retire, leading up to that last fight, and you know, obviously I hoped that last fight would go well. I knew I had a challenge standing in front of me in Royale Machida, and was up for the challenge, and it didn't go my way. But I've been very, very content and happy with the decision that I made. I got out at the right time. For me, didn't stay too long. Didn't suffer any long-standing damage. I'm sure that you ask any of my ex-wives, and that might be questionable. But I didn't suffer physically in any way, and I think my legacy stands for itself. As hard as there are people out there that would like to erase that legacy, it stands alone, and I'm proud of it. I've had a bunch of amazing fights, and it was a crazy journey, something I never saw myself doing, a lot like acting in some ways. And I'm having a lot of fun doing that now.
Now, we want to get your thoughts on a big fight, but just quickly, you mentioned about your legacy and people trying to erase that. I got to get something out here. As an MMA fan, it really disappointed us to not see you in the UFC Undisputed games made by THQ. I know a lot of fight fans and gaming fans wanted to recreate, you know, their favorite fights. Obviously, you weren't there. So, you know, guys like us, we'd spend days and days and days trying to, you know, get your face correct in the Creator Fighter feature, which, you know, much to the dismay of our girlfriends. You were, however, in the EA MMA. You were in the EA MMA, which wasn't quite as good, but now EA's taken over the license. They're making a fantastic looking UFC game. What are the chances of seeing you in there maybe as a legend? And if not this one, what about in a future title?
Well, I certainly have a strong relationship with the guys from EA, and they saw the wisdom in kind of putting me and Fedor and some of those guys that were big names in the sport into their version of the game when it came out, and I was happy to be a part of that. I think if hell freezes over, there's a chance I might be in the new game, just because it's a UFC game, and there's no way that the powers that be in the UFC are going to allow me to be part of that.
All right, so you're saying there's a chance. I like those odds. And if that's a no, then I'll break the bad news to my girlfriend. Randy, I also wanted to ask you, as a former light heavyweight champion yourself, what are your thoughts on the light heavyweight title fight between Jon Jones and Glover Teixeira, and how do you think it's going to play out?
It's Jon Jones and who?
Glover Teixeira.
Oh, Glover. You know, Glover, I think, has certainly amazing power. He's a tremendous athlete. He definitely has a puncher's chance at winning that fight. I think John's a more well-rounded fighter, and I think probably going to be a favorite in that. If I was a betting man, I think that Jones is going to find a way to get the job done.
Now, Randy, it's time.
But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's time for the tap out round. Basically, this is a round in Submission Radio where we ask you questions, and we want you to give us the first thing that pops into your head, like a word association. Okay, we're going to throw a bunch of questions at you. First thing that pops into your head. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, Van Damme versus Seagal. Who wins?
Van Damme.
In a battle royale between the Expendables cast, excluding yourself, who wins?
The current cast.
Yep.
The current cast for Expendables 3, Ralphie.
Tell us one Chuck Norris joke.
Chuck Norris story.
Just a joke.
Just a Chuck Norris joke.
Oh gosh, I had one too. I'm trying to think of one. Sorry, I'm stalling out. I can't think of one.
That's all right. We'll move on. Did you watch Brock Lesnar break the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania?
No, I've never been a big fan of WWE or the pro wrestling stuff. I am a big fan of catch as catch can wrestling, which is kind of the precursor to what the WWE has become. But we haven't seen those kinds of real grapplers in 60 years.
Yeah.
How is GSP in a Captain America movie and you're not?
That's funny. I've been asked that question a bunch, and I'm a big fan of him and the movies. They're great. I just saw the new one the other night, and it was remarkable. Very, very well done. But it would have been fun to play a role, any role in that movie.
All right, riddle time. What's heavy forwards but not backwards?
Heavy forwards but not backwards. Big country. Roy Nelson.
Good answer, but we're looking for ton because it's not backwards.
It's just a fun fact. Now, if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing from the future, what would it be?
Go back in time and tell myself, oh yeah, don't marry that girl.
Greatest opponent in your MMA career?
Greatest opponent? Oh man, they were all amazing opponents for various reasons. Toughest fight was still the first time I fought Pedro Hizzo, and kind of the first amazing trilogy in the sport with Chuck Liddell. I would probably have to go with Chuck Liddell.
You were a part of the first Ultimate Fighter. When you guys first started shooting the thing, did anyone know what was going on?
Everybody was hopeful that it was going to be a huge success. The sport needed it, but it was a huge risk, and nobody really knew for sure if people were going to get it. Fortunately, they did, and really it changed the sport forever. I'm very happy to have been a part of that first season. Those are a lot of special guys in that first season.
Now finish this sentence, Randy. People don't know that I...
People don't know that I write poetry.
Oh, no way. You have to give us one. Come on, Randy. One poem, one little one.
Oh, one poem? You want a poem?
Just a little one.
We love one. For the ladies out there.
Yeah, I'll pull one up. This is one of the first ones I ever wrote. I started writing in college.
Wow. This interview just took a turn that I didn't think it would.
I was a foreign language and literature major in college at Oklahoma State. That's where I wrestled for 4 years. It's one of the best wrestling programs in the country. And I started writing when I was studying, and it just kind of taken on a life of its own. This is the very first poem that I wrote. It's called What I Like. I like smiling faces and showering kisses. I like warm embraces and near misses. I like life on the edge and the smell of rain. I like making a pledge that will always remain. I like tender tickles in the heat of the fight. I like the taste of pickles and the motivation of fright. But most of all, I like love, I like life, and I like you. That's what I like.
Wow. You know what? Now
That's actually pretty good.
That's a really good poem. Now the interview's taken a turn, and I'm rethinking my whole life after that poem. Like I'm like, what have I done? What have I done with my life, Casper? What have I? Okay, next question. Would me and Casper make a good addition as the sneaky Australian bad guys in Expendables 4?
Oh, I think absolutely.
All right, you heard it live. You heard it from Randy.
We expect a contract.
Now, did you know, and you might have some competition here, did you know Steven Seagal has a band and is touring the country? And if a fight is out of the question, who wins in a sing-off?
What genre of music?
Something to do with the Crystal Cave.
What we're going to do is we will tweet you an album cover of Steven Seagal, songs from the Crystal Cave, 2005 smash hit.
Oh my gosh, is he singing?
He's singing.
If you could call it.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting.
Now, who do you think would win in a sing-off? We don't want you to, change your mind now that he's a famous professional singer.
I would challenge him to a sing-off, no problem. And hopefully a fight would break out at the concert. That would be fun too.
We'll call Don Fry. He'll be there. And last question, greatest moment of your MMA career?
Man, I had several amazing moments, and I think any time you're counted out as an underdog and you manage to find a way to win those fights, it's always a good night. But my favorite fight is still the Tim Sylvia fight at 44, coming out of retirement after a year and fighting one of the biggest guys in the sport and managing to win the heavyweight title again.
I would agree. That's definitely a crazy fight and definitely one of the moments that stand out for all the fans of yourself and of MMA in general. Randy, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Guys, Expendables 3 is I believe, August 15th in 2014 in the US. Follow Randy Couture on his Twitter at Randy_Couture. And young rappers, all right, listen out for this poetry because this is what's up, all right? Put all your rhymes in the garbage and listen to Randy Couture because the man knows.
It's a pleasure, Randy. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, guys.